just like I did when I was a kid, and you would have like a toy robot and you would take it apart. And some kids put those things back together and they became Silicon Valley, engineers. And then I just had a bunch of busted robot parts and I became a drummer.
Hey everybody, welcome to For the Record, a casual, mostly unedited conversation series presented by Grey Matter, where we talk to music heads about their stories and the music that makes them. I'm your host, McKeegan Voice. Today, on episode 36, I spoke with Chris Corsano. Chris is a New York-based drummer who has been active at the intersections of collective improvisation, free jazz, avant-rock, and experimental music since the late 1990s. He's been the rim-batterer of choice for some of the greatest contemporary purveyors of both jazz, alongside the likes of Joe McPhee, Paul Flaherty, Mette Rasmussen, and Zoh Amba, as well as rock, with folks like Sir Richard Bishop, Bill Orcutt, and Jim O'Rourke, as well as artists beyond categorization, like Michael Flower, Okkyung Lee, and perhaps most notably, Björk. The Guardian has called him one of the world's great drummers. We caught up during his semi-permanent tour, in his words, right before he left to do a sound check at the London venue, Cafe Auto. Hope you enjoy.
All right, well, Chris, it's really great to have you here.
Good to be here.
As with all those things, actually, I wanted to make a note. I think this may be the first time. This is episode 36, and I think this is potentially the first time I've ever interviewed someone who's also in London at the time of the interview, which is cool. But anyways, that aside, would love, to kind of go back to the beginning and, get a sense of you and where you're from, where you grew up, and when your relationship with music started.
Mm-hmm. Born in 1975, so grew up New Jersey in the late 70s, early 80s, and then probably came to music. The thing that I would say still has a connection to what I do now would probably be Hendrix. And there's a few other things that came after that, like Captain Beefheart or the Minutemen, where you can see a thread that runs all the way from when you heard that when you were, say, Hendrix was like 12 or 13. And maybe I'm getting a different thing out of it now, but somehow connected. My 48-year-old self and my 13-year-old self still connect very deeply with it. And, becoming a drummer and how I play with guitarists, I think has a lot to do with how Mitch Mitchell dealt with what Hendrix was exploding. So, stuff like that is interesting to see, because I definitely wasn't aware of all the kind of free improv stuff that I got into later.
Right.
When I started listening, I was just, Hendrix was, that was the era of back of the magazine, buy 8 for the price of 1, and so a bunch of like kind of cutouts. And I think Smash Hits was the Hendrix tape that I got. And that was a big one. And then later on, my sister's at the time boyfriend hipped me to the Minutemen. And that was huge. Definitely huge. And still is like a really big cornerstone of how I think about, say, like playing in a rhythm section, just like the link that Watt and Hurley had. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I would love to, explore that a little bit more, kind of, as you're talking about this kind of relationship between, like a drummer and the other instrumentalists, particularly the guitarist, perhaps. But, let's say other instrumentalists in general, and guess, kind of understand like where, like what you're hearing and what you're paying attention to, when you're thinking, like when you're listening to Hendrix, when you're listening to that music, when you're listening to Minutemen, and then as you apply it to your own, to your own approach.
Mm-hmm. I would say that different people have different things they lock into. Some people hear a song once and seem to know the lyrics immediately, right?
Mhm.
That's not me. I'm responding to, I don't know, changes in dynamics or something. I think the way that I play is a clue to what my brain just keys in on, and then you, like all musicians, you just sort of follow that, and that would be your strong point, hopefully.
Mhm.
And I think what I was hearing, I definitely noticed this with the Meters, New Orleans band, kind of funk, just amazing.
Yeah.
And trying to play those drum parts when I was, I don't know, maybe I heard them when I was 16, and it was just, another mind expanding, mind blowing experience. They were just being played on the radio because I grew up in Jersey, so that's like right across the river from New York City, so I could get all those great radio stations. And they were doing like a hour-long program just on the meter stuff. So I was trying to play those drum beats, and on top of course, all the nuance and just cultural information that I didn't have. But just, you could write it down and play it exactly, sort of exactly as it was played, but you still wouldn't get it because so much of the meters is the hookup between the bass and the drums.
Mm.
And so much of what George Hurley's doing is really about how it links up with what Watt's doing. And D Boon's flying all above it. And, so it's like really two things becoming, um, you know, greater than the sum of the parts, like it becoming a whole, but then also retaining their individuality. You can hear every note, and you still, like, Watt's bass lines were amazing. Like I later first was trying to learn George Hurley's drum parts just to, that's how I learned, was just listen to records and see if you could kind of take it apart and learn the mechanics. Why does this work? Why do I like this? And then hopefully go somewhere else with it, not just copying, but that takes a whole lifetime to get
Right.
to the next levels. But yeah, just like, so in that part of taking it apart, just like I did when I was a kid, and you would have like a toy robot and you would take it apart, and some kids put those things back together and they became Silicon Valley, engineers. And then I just had a bunch of busted robot parts and I became a drummer. It kind of always taking things apart and seeing, oh, well, now it's a part, I can't put it back together the way it was supposed to go, but I can maybe, come up with some sort of Frankenstein's monster. It's usually how it goes. Yeah, so then just the learning that, that it's like, and I've had that experience too playing. It was like, I feel I'm playing better, but it's not me, it's who I'm playing with. They're so good they can link up with me in a way that makes me be myself more than 100%, and they're taking care of like all the people in the room kind of, and how they respond. And so that's like a thing that a lot of bassists seem, not all, definitely not all, but some who are really great, who I've had the good luck to play with, have that. And so I'm trying to, figure out how I can do that. That's like and since I'm mostly doing improvised music, it's not about like learning a part so well that then you have the extra ability to shade and speed up or slow down just tiny little, like this is like you have to kind of compose in the moment, so your choices are wide open, and so the freedom's there, and then the responsibility's there because you could just choose to follow your own sound and only your own sound, or hopefully if you have enough awareness and you can kind of zoom out enough to see what other people are doing and what would help them without sacrificing yourself, like that balance of community and individual is
Right.
is kind of like what I learned from listening to rhythm sections, I guess.
Cool. I love that. I mean, so was it pretty early on that you realized that when you took apart a toy robot, you wanted to kind of keep these pieces and, create like a new Frankenstein, and getting into more of like improvisational music and like free jazz and the avant-garde experimental? Were you already leaning in that direction pretty early on, or did that, take some time?
I think I didn't connect the dot, so like there's me as a kid with just whatever it was, like if I was skating, you'd have to like swap out the wheels and the bearings or whatever, just be taking things apart. And maybe your skill level wasn't at the, like you try and drill something and the first hole would be off. Yeah, just like sort of that learning process that working with tools. And I think with coming to like improvised music was another kind of breaking of the mind and kind of an opening of a world. So I think then it's like, oh well, how do I heard some stuff that blew my mind again, and then it's like I wanted to do that. And then you're trying to listening to records and how does this work and like what's good and what's not good, whatever that means. Like how do I define this for myself?
Right.
Um, and a lot of the records I was listening to were like, mid to late 60s, early 70s of before I was alive. And it's like coming from this different place. So it's like I don't really just like the meters, it's like it's from a time and space that I can't just like pretend like I belong there. So I have to figure out how do I respect what's come before me and by people who really earned it and invented it, and what do I come up with. And then I think just it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just just like kind of a little itch or something that you just had to, oh, like I want this drum to do something different, or I would just want it to be noisier. It's not getting the sound that I'm looking for. So how do I add something? If you're playing with guitarists and they all have these guitar pedals,
Right.
to like that, like what's the equivalent? And then that's been like over the years, just sometimes living in places where there weren't a lot of people that I knew to play with. And so then, out of that, the necessity breeds solo playing. And then what would make a solo interesting is like, well, maybe materials, like, yeah, just working different materials to see if you can come up with different sounds that you haven't heard that you want to hear.
Right. I'd love to hear a little bit more. I mean, yeah, I imagine it's kind of like a, prepared piano, kind of approach where you're just adding, different textures and materials to the drum set itself.
Totally. Yeah. And then they're like, if you're not adding materials, maybe they're, they get called extended techniques, right? For improv or like modern classical stuff. But then I would say like this bunch of like, say metal drumming, which was never really my thing. But like I would be doing, there's like a technique where you can take one stick and kind of do a drum roll with it instead of right, left. It's just, you're just using the fulcrum of the rim of the drum and you're like, and it's like, it's a thing that metal drummers do that I didn't know metal drummers did. Because somebody showed it to me a long time ago and I was like, oh, that seems like like what do you do with that? Like it seemed like it could have been like a gimmick because like at the time I didn't know what to do with it. But then when I started playing with people, it's like, oh, you could have this like drone, and I was getting into like noise and drum music. So like if you want like a steady drone, that became useful. So that's like an extended technique or whatever. But then yeah, like that's all over metal, gravity blast stuff. So like I like how it shows up in different like parallel evolves like, in parallel in all these different types of music. And yeah, just getting into what if I dig the stick in this way? What if I do, like just modifying every variable because a lot of people have a problem with the word experimental in front of music.
Yeah.
And I think that depends on who did you first hear say experimental music, and if you like them, you're okay with it. But if they seem like a jerk, you're like, no, I hate experimental music because it means this. We all have these things in our head, and I have no problem with it because I actually feel like I am at home experimenting. Try this, try that, try that. I might not be. I mean, I'm trying things out because I'm improvising, like in front of an audience. I'm not. Hopefully not doing it too irresponsibly. I'm not like making people suffer through many failed experiments, hopefully, yeah, like I think, but yeah, that like out of experiments, you develop things, techniques and a language, trial and error the root of a lot of the sounds I come up with. But then how I put them together is based on the people I'm playing with or the acoustics of the room I'm in. You know, like applying things is how you can keep improvisation in it. You know, being true to what moment you're in, rather than just like, I've got this bag of magic tricks, basically, you know,
Right.
which is the death of a lot of that stuff, I feel like. So my
Yeah.
aim is to stay rooted in what needs to happen in that moment, you know, whatever
Right.
that is.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, experimental, you know, as kind of a qualifier, you know, can be strange. I mean, it does mean something, but you're right. I think that's a good point. It's like whatever, you know, the person who hears that term experimental music hears immediately afterwards is forever going to be linked to the term experimental music, when like in actuality, it can apply to like basically anything. You know, it's
Yeah.
all relative, you know.
It could be the genre, you know, whatever that means, you know, whatever record store you're in, what they filed in under the card experimental music, or it could be the process by which something is created, you know, trying something new, like that could be considered, you know, an experiment. And yeah, like it, and then at what point is it no longer really an experiment anymore? And then does it cease to become like, there's a lot of linguistic stuff to chew on, and I don't really want to get bogged down in too much of that, but I'm fine with the term. It's language, and speaking about music is always dancing about architecture, that old one. So yeah, you know, it is what it is. And I do still, you know, I was just going to charity shops today and dinging on metal things to see, like, is this going to resonate a certain way on the floor tom? Like by now, you know, like hopefully with experimenting things, like the way that science builds up, you know, you try things out and you learn from them, and you can retain that knowledge and move ahead. And so now I know, like, you know, if you put something that with enough weight, it'll lean into the drum skin and then it'll resonate in a certain way. If it's too light, it'll flop around. So, you know, like one benefit of getting older is if you can remember some of the stuff that didn't go so well, you don't have to repeat those mistakes, and you can kind of move forward, maybe.
Yeah. Wisdom is the hope.
Yeah.
um Cool. Yeah, I mean, I would love to, you know, dive into that a little bit more, like through the context or like through the lens of, um, you know, the people that you've played with over the years, because it, you know, at this point you've been on a ton of records, you've played with a ton of different people. You know, right after this conversation, you're going to play at Cafe Auto, and would love to just hear about, you know, how your approach, I guess, has evolved through, you know, through these relationships. And, you know, because it's kind of, you know, also bridging that gap that you talked about between like community and, you know, an individual. It's like how do I play by myself? How do I play with this person? How do I understand that? And especially like going into, you know, those kind of relationships now, like having done that so many times, like how do you approach playing with somebody new for the first time? And you're like, how do you decide if you're interested in playing with somebody, you know, for instance? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, gut feeling plays a lot, and you know, your gut is not always correct. So there's also a second gut feeling of when to really trust your gut and when to, you know, second guess it and be open. Um, and just where I'm at, being like, um, yeah, you know, sometimes like if you have a lot of different projects going on, and something that happens in this, I tour a ton, and that's how I keep my friendships going with people. And so if I'm not touring with them, I don't get to see them, because by now it's like I'm playing with people spread out all over the world. And so, um, you know, I just played in Japan in the beginning of April, and I got to see some friends who live there who I don't see unless I go there, and it's not easy to get there. So yeah, like, so then, you know, this expanding and contracting universes, and sometimes it's like it is based on also life stuff, because if you do this so much that you don't have time for vacations, really, you know, I like to, like, but you have all these friends. So yeah, like things as seemingly tangential are involved in it, like, but then there's also just like the real base of it is like does this person have a sound that I emotionally respond to on some level, that I feel like I want to, that I hear myself in some way? Because there's plenty of music I love that I'm just not, doesn't need me. I mean, I need it, but it, you know, I just need to hear it. And then do they seem like they listen? And sometimes you don't know that until you play with them, but sometimes you can kind of tell, you know, like you hear how they're responding to a situation. And yeah, like for it to be a developing long-term project, I my MO is really like hear what somebody's doing and respond to it. And that conversational nature of improvising is really, I lean on that heavily. And uh, also trying to introduce other stuff too, to not have it go beyond just a back forth. But you know, it's like thinking of structures and what can I introduce, and retaining my own directions. But at the same time, like you need ears, you know, you gotta really be listening intently. And if you're good, people who've blown my mind, it feels like they are playing with reckless abandon while at the same time magically um, linking up with the people they're playing with. And maybe it is magic, and maybe it is something supernatural. Maybe it is that they're very talented. Maybe that we haven't quantified it the same way that like there's a lot of you know, classical music, Western classical music might be the model of, I don't know, that's a complicated, maybe I shouldn't even go there, but you know, like the way that things get talked about, like virtuosos, and you know, like the qualities of what makes a virtuosic musician in that realm. Um, I don't think listening gets talked about as much because it's usually playing a score written down. You don't have to be listening, you know, to the rest of the orchestra if you are the soloist, right?
Right.
But in this music that I care about, it's the power dynamic is central to it, you know, and I like that politically too, because you're watching people deal with collective action, and some people are not collectively minded, and that is usually disappointing. And then when you see what a collective can accomplish without people sacrificing their own voices, that's beautiful. Like that just seems to align with my politics even before hearing that music. And so when I heard free improv for the first time, it seemed like this the most beautiful version of anarchist thought, right? And I was sold, like immediately, like I was converted. And then yeah, like it, the responsibility becomes how do you do that uh, in a way that honors that tradition and keeps the collective in mind, and isn't an ego trip, you know?
Yeah. Do you remember like who you were listening to or what you were listening to when you had that moment, like when you converted, you know,
It,
forever?
it was live music because I think I heard a lot of, not a lot, but I was listening to records already, like Ornette Coleman, John Coltrane, Cecil Taylor, like, and then there was I was doing the door and putting up posters around town for a concert series. Michael Ehlers, who does Aramite Records, he was putting on in Amherst, Massachusetts, where I was living near. This would have been about 95, 96. And I saw um, Paul Flaherty and Randall Colburn, their quintet, totally free improvisation, really wild to me sounding, you know, like really loose and noisy. And, you know, I'm 19 at the time, and they were, I guess, in their 50s. And so to a 19-year-old who was not enlightened, you know, that seemed very old. But like, you know, my model was like punk rock, like, you know, and that sort of like never trust anybody over 30, or, you know, like that kind of thing of like, oh, energy music is played by kids in like hardcore shows. But it's like, this was like, these are these like adults, you know, like playing the highest energy music I'd ever heard. And really, you know, like Randy's head just like was whipping around, you know, he's a great drummer, and like his head seemed like it was just gonna fly off his shoulders. And the lights were out, and they're just like all moving around the room. It just seemed like a lot wilder than some of the shows that I was going to, you know, like they were more like punk shows that were great, but this seemed to open a door. And also really like take away some foolish notions I had about like who played wild music, or and so like, and hopefully you keep like breaking those illusions that I or anyone might come to a scene with. And so they were really big. This band Test from New York, which is a quartet, and it was like, this was also hearing saxophones live in a room, just really wailing, like just real high energy, but beautiful too at the same time. So like this combination of just a gorgeous sound that's screaming at the same time. Yeah, kind of like it's not a paradox, but it, up until that point it was. And yeah, so that kind of brain breaking paradox that yeah, that really pushed things forward in a way that records I enjoyed, but I didn't get it until I was in the room. Like live music, I think from then on always became like the most important thing to me. That's how I can actually judge if someone, I can hear somebody on record and be like, oh, I might enjoy playing with them, or I might have something that they, this might work. I might have something to offer them too. It's like a two-way street. But if I see them live, I can tell instantly of like whether I mean, they might not, I shouldn't speak for anybody else, but yeah, I feel like I can get a much quicker read on, because I'm seeing what they're responding to. Like on a record, you're just hearing this thing, but in a live situation, you're in the room too, and you're like, oh, I hear this acoustic. I see what's going on. I see all that they're dealing with. I mean, I don't know what they ate for dinner or what happened, but like, I have more information. I'm seeing, improvisation is just a series of decisions, one after another, just like all an infinite amount squeezed into a space of time. And I'm seeing the decisions they're making in real time while I'm in that real time too. And so like, if they're zigging when I would zag, like, or like, oh, what, yeah, I just, that's how I can get a good feel. And I think that thread goes back to seeing those shows when I was 19 and seeing how the energy in that room, both with Test and Flaherty Colburn, just kept escalating and escalating. And it felt like any other band would have like tried to resolve the tension or whatever that, like in a musical, yeah, however you want to put it, like they would have given up, but like they just kept like climbing the holy mountain. And then it just like, it just sort of, I mean, there were peaks and valleys, like it was also very dynamic, but it never, I don't know. I don't know how to like describe, it just felt kind of otherworldly and sort of like being on some kind of substance that was unknown to me up until that point. And so that's what I've been chasing ever since.
Cool. I love that. Yeah, it reminds me of a time I saw Glenn Branca, and I was in a space in New York, and there were, it was like a guitar symphony, and there were 25 or 30 guitars that were playing in the room. The acoustics of this place was unreal, and there was, it might have been The Ascension. I mean, that's like one of his, pretty famous, pieces. And there's just a moment where everything just keeps increasing, and then you keep thinking you're at your peak, and it just keeps going up and up and up. I mean, it's a bit transcendent, you kind of leave your body a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. Well, that seems like a good transition to come back to the records. I know we're losing some of the, some of the magic that you can only experience live, but in the background of the series and for the record, we're keeping track of all of the different music entities and music mentions that come up in conversation in order to kind of create a database. And our ultimate goal is to create an interactive map so you can see how music is kind of the connective tissue between people and between people. So a few questions I would love to ask about the music that you listen to. And first, to start, would love to hear how you listen to music, how you discover music, and if you could kind of frame it through different curators or outlets, or even platforms that you spend time with.
I mean, a lot of it is Bandcamp, just checking out different people like that thing of like, oh, would this work to play with this person, that person, or just somebody's like, oh, you have to check out so and so, and so then Bandcamp's kind of great too. Just check it for because it is the most direct. Usually, it's somebody's. I put my stuff up there or whoever. Or on tour, like I opened for Flaherty, amazing cellist, last August around the UK. Did her trio, and just hearing that live, and then going to again like check out the records, and like that. I mean, I'm really like a live music based creature. Which is funny because I did work in record stores and for record labels for a bunch of time. So it is like and I do love records too. I just like understand so much more quickly. So there's usually some sort of connection to the live thing, but then there are things where it's just impossible to see someone live, and word of mouth usually is like and since I play with a lot of musicians, then it's like, who are they talking about? Who did they just play with? And they're like, oh, and like I'm on a tour now with Zoh Amba and Frida Amadou, and Frida was just like an hour ago, she sent me a WhatsApp on the group, message thing about like, oh, this is the guitarist I was talking about, right? So you're always like trading information, which is I really like. And then I'll go, um, and but I would say Bandcamp usually is like a pretty good way of that's my preferred method.
Cool. Cool. If you can remember, what's the first album you ever purchased, and then what's the most recent?
First album, that's a Mike Watt question, because he does the Watt from Pedro show. It's like episode like a 1100 or what. He's done over 1,000 of them, and there are these questions, and it's what's the first album you bought with your own money. So when I did the interview with him, I think my answer was a Weird Al Yankovic tape.
Nice.
I mean, I was and that was probably the first thing I bought with my own money. And if not that, then it was like the 8 for a penny or whatever those magazine ones were, and it would have been kind of so-called classic rock. The Hendrix tape was probably in that batch. Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, that sort of thing.
Cool.
And what was the other half?
Yeah, and then it was most recent.
Most recent. Let's see, what is the most recent? Let's see. I'm really drawing a blank on what the most recent one was. Maybe Marta Verilis, or a great piano player. And or didn't purchase, but a band I'm about to tour with, Earthball, from British Columbia, was kindly sent the album. So like not quite purchased, but most recently enjoyed.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that counts.
Yeah. I'm now on a permanent tour, so in terms of purchasing albums, I have nowhere to put them.
Yeah.
It's like that would have been actually like an actual physical album bought would have been a long time ago, before July 2023.
Right. Permanent tour sounds long.
Yeah. There'll be like breaks of a couple weeks here and there where I'm in a specific spot, or I was recording, and then wasn't. But it's been great. I didn't think it would last. I think I actually started really in earnest in like mid-August of last year, and then I thought it would just be like 2 months, and then I settled down somewhere, and I thought New York City, because I've got family that's still in Jersey, and it's a good place to play with people, a good place to fly to other places. But New York is, impossibly expensive, and
Yeah.
if I was trying to live somewhere so I could get to other places easily, I might as well just go to those other places and not have to pay New York rent. So it will eventually, stop. But for now, things just keep lining up. And like I said before, it's like the way I get to see friends is by doing shows with them. And so
Right.
it's, I think the question I've been asked the most about it is like, or how you sort of handling it, like as if it would be like, is it emotionally taxing? And I mean, it could be physically taxing, and it can be, if you have a rough travel day, it's not the best. But my take on it is like, I could also be at home and be tired and miserable, and like all those emotions that you have, you can, wherever you go, there you are. So,
Yeah.
it hasn't felt long. No, like, some days feel longer than others, but that's true when you do have a house.
Right.
So for now, it's been, I think once it starts feeling long, then I know it's time to,
Time to take a break.
yeah.
Yeah. Fair. Cool. Okay, here's the next question for you. 3 artists of note that you've heard for the first time, like in the past year-ish.
Okay, Mabe Frati would definitely be one. Really, really enjoyed touring and seeing her and her band night after night, because they're songs, but they were played differently, and with like a real sense of improvisation
Mhm.
and amazing structures to them. And I would, every night I would have a realization of something about it. I was like, wow, this song structure is, I'd never picked up on it before, but it never repeats. It just keeps going. And I think the song has like been 20 minutes long, and I didn't even notice, like stuff like that. That was really great. And let's see. Whew. I should have cheated and asked for these questions ahead of time, because I'm bad at drawing blanks.
All right, you're
Um,
allowed to look this up too. You can always, I mean, people often cheat. It's not even cheating. I mean, if you want, need to reference your phone or something.
okay. Yeah, because I really am blanking. Well, actually, Earthball, that was another, because I opened for them in Victoria, British Columbia, and that show was just bonkers. How, again, like their sense of being in the moment, because it was all improvised, but kind of more rock, so-called, like really noisy and rock and repeating structures, but always shifting, and
Mhm.
which I feel is a really, I mean, it's hard to pull off anything and pull it off and do it as well as they did their thing. But like to do that, it seems like there's a very, for my taste, like a really like razor's edge of like, you're not relying too much on repetition, and not, but you're still taking risks, but you're also focused enough to kind of get this song structure feel, but you're like, the line is always blurred, but in a great way, not like pixelated blurred, but just like that's how it should be.
Yeah.
I've thought a lot about that show. That's a thing, like with Mabe as well, like that I keep coming back to it. And like those shows that blew my mind when I was 19, I just kept coming back to it and trying to, understand what I was getting from it in the moment as much as like what they were doing. But now it's like, as soon as you tell a story of an event, you no longer really remember the event. You're sort of remembering your storytelling.
Right.
Um, so yeah, like that, not to build those things up as too mythical, but yeah, like I've kind of like mythologized those things of just like you're in a room, and that's why that's why we talk about music. It's kind of like it's brain breaking. I spent 40 minutes just in this altered state thanks to these 3 people or 5 people. Yeah, totally incredible. And whew, and what was the uh I think Don Malphone was somebody so after opening for now it's all flooding back.
That's how it happens.
Yeah, I'll have to do 2, so I'm gonna make it 4, and I'll be quick. Don Malfone is a saxophonist who's lives part of the time in Barcelona, but then is also in Mexico City. I went to Mexico after the tour with Mabe. Mabe lives in Mexico City now, Guatemalan, but lives in Mexico City, as does the rest of her band. So we toured in the UK together, had such a good time that Gibran Andrade, the drummer in Mabe's band, he's like, if you ever want to come to Mexico, we could do a tour together. And he's got a he's Don Malfone and Gibran are the 2, 3, and 4, no specific order, but of the things that blew my mind
Cool.
this past year. And Gibran does a solo thing called Androide, which is contact mics, solo drum thing, and vocals, and it's just amazing. And he's got a record, again, I didn't purchase, but he gave to me, and I played it for John from Earthball, so it all kind of, and he was blown away by it too. So it's nice when you can kind of make those connections. That's
Sure.
So Androide, and that's a good record link because it's on Bandcamp. So yeah, I got to see him do some solo sets, which were really cool. And then he gave me these records, and this one was just like the sound of it, everything, and that my friend John got to hear it, and that he responded the same way was like somehow validating or whatever. And
Totally.
and Don Malfone is it's really cool. Like, I play with a lot of sax players because I love the sound of it. When I love the sound, I really love the sound. And not to, I mean, I'm 48, so but at any point you could always be like, Pete, not like you've heard it all, and that's not where I was going with it, but that I'm not hearing new things at the rate that I was when I was 19, because you've
heard more.
Yeah. And I don't ever want to get in that space, because the people who I played with when I was young were older than me. Like, I started playing with a lot of these people who blew my mind. I just like approached them and I was like, that was amazing. And they're like, thanks. Do you play? Like, they were very open and encouraging. And I think that's a really great part of this tradition too, of like the collective nature, is like, you're not trying to separate yourself from the audience. You're looking for other people to bring new information, new experiments or whatever. And so yeah, I'm always happy to have my mind blown. And then you hear certain people talk like, oh, have you heard this, have you heard that? And sometimes you hear that and you check it out and you're like, oh, I guess I'm getting old because I actually prefer whatever, Evan Parker or John Butcher, like these kind of, are a lot of Anchor, there's like a lot of people who came before me who I will always look up to, and they're hard to beat because they're amazing, but that my brain and my heart and my ears have room for new information as well, and just like it's kind of an expanding universe again instead of contracting. So and like it's like these people, it's not like they've been at it for a while. It's just like my route of coming to discover them, and that I'm still open to discovering stuff was encouraging, I guess I could say.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Cool. Okay, so this is the big question, and most people don't like it. You're going to a desert island and you get to bring 3 records with you. What are they?
Desert island would be pretty sad. Ooh, the Curtis Mayfield double live. That one, there was a year where I think I only listened to Curtis Mayfield's just because it suited me. So perhaps that would be yeah. Although I may have like desert islanded that record already, but yeah, no, I think you could always listen to that record. It's incredible. And then I was thinking of like, say, Test, that band that I saw when I was 19 that like really changed a lot of stuff, but maybe their live Test record, um, that one, I mean, it's impossible. Like a postcard of the Grand Canyon is not the Grand Canyon, like, so like that live thing versus the record, but like
Right.
it's a pretty nice postcard, I would say. So yeah, maybe live Test, and then Billie Holiday.
All right.
I mean, I'm thinking like, you're on a desert island, just gonna be like very sad, trying to like figure out a way of like making some kind of just like mind-numbing beverage out of a coconut or what. I don't know what I'd get up to, but yeah, I think yeah, I'll go with that. I'm not sure which Billie Holiday. Maybe I would have to go for like a very like a CD box set just to like cheat a little bit and try and get some extra. Or maybe Hendrix. Yeah. Let's say Billie Holiday. So Curtis live, Test live. Interesting that I picked two live records.
Makes sense. I'm not surprised after this
Yeah.
conversation.
And yeah, Billie Holiday for when I'm incredibly sad that I'm stuck on a desert island.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of live stuff, some of the stuff that Billy has recorded, live is also like pretty incredible. Some of the energy that is captured there. So maybe that'll be part of the box set that,
Yeah.
that you're in. Cool. Yeah, Chris, this has been amazing. Really appreciate you taking the time, to be here, especially right before you have a gig. I know you're going to do a sound check right after this. Two more small questions for you, for folks listening who'd like to listen to music or get involved, come see you play. Where's the best place for them to tune in?
I guess the best place to figure out where I'm gonna be is my usually updated website, and then I've got a Bandcamp page. It's a little disorganized just because of the way that this, you end up on a lot of records and you're not always the one who's in charge of it. But it just got announced today that I did a solo record there where I'm playing. It's like it's a little kind of a halfway departure. It's like connecting back to like Minutemen and Hendrix. So I'm playing guitar and bass and drums, but it's also like these sort of prepared drum things with these strings stretched across the drums, and it's like trying to flip back and forth between those threads that go all the way back and make songs built out of this more improvisational language and stuff. And that's going to be on Drag City, and there's like a video of I started doing paintings over the pandemic, and like worked with this animator, Kim Alpert, and so she helps me. Yeah, so it like the Drag City website may be where an indication of where I'm at this moment, and yeah.
Cool. And then now that you've been through the ringer, and actually especially because you were a response to this question, which is important. When we had Armin and Jing on the show, suggested that that we chat with you. Who's another music head that comes to mind who we bring on for the record?
Okay. I thought of someone, but then they're a bit reclusive and they wouldn't do it, so I'm not going to say their name.
Okay. Appreciate that.
But yeah, I'm thinking of like people have hit me to so much stuff and get really, really excited about things. And then don't think of a gray elephant, and so like I can only think of this person, but again, will not say their name because let's see. Ben Chesney actually is I really like how he is passionate about things and checks out a wide range of things, and is like he just gets super super excited. So I would maybe recommend him or Frida Amadou, who I mentioned before, who I'm on tour with, who she has been hipping me to stuff. And I really like how she thinks about music. And, you know, she's an improviser, so she's playing with all the different things. And I would recommend her because, yeah, I think you know, because I'm recommending her because I would like to hear her responses.
It's good.
Because, you know, comparing like two improvisers, I feel like we sort of have similar approaches, maybe, but you don't really know until you kind of sit down and really listen to how
Right.
someone comes up with their stuff. So yeah, Frida.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's it. And yeah, I want to say thanks again, you know, Chris, for being here. I really appreciate it. You know, hope the gig goes well tonight.
Thanks.
And yeah, you continue to maintain energy on your permanent tour for as long as possible.
Thanks. Thanks for letting me rattle on about all the things that I love.
That's
in
what
this
we're
work.
here for.
Cool.
That's the point. Cool, man. Well, thanks again. And yeah, you do well.
All right. You too.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for being here. That's a wrap on another episode of For the Record, a conversation series with all manner of music heads about their stories and the music that makes them. It's a production of Grey Matter and a new Crate Coalition experiment in building connective listening graphs. We stamp every music mention you heard here, from musicians to venue owners to journalists to tech builders to DJs, and in the background, we're mapping these names to form those yet unseen connective threads between people. Want to get involved? You can check out our website at greymatter.fm or come hang out in the Crate Coalition Discord. See you next time.